Good morning. Welcome. I decided last week that I was going to host this Q&A session, and I had a little bit of technical difficulties streaming live, so I thought I'll answer questions in this video format. And any questions that come in afterwards or in response to this video, I'll address those at a later date. So yeah, I wanted to make this video just to kind of get a sense of what people struggle with and what people want to know in terms of brand strategy and brand identity work. And one of the questions that came in that I'll start with is actually about typography. And let me just read the question. So it comes from Ham Nemo, and she sent in that she sometimes struggles with choosing a typeface for her brand, and she's not sure if the choice that she's made has the right look and feel. And so she wants to know how I go about it, and when are you sure you have chosen well? So that's a fantastic question. And I think, it always, anytime we're making decisions, creative decisions for a brand, whether it be typeface choices, color palette, or around putting together an aesthetic for a brand so that it's cohesive, we always want to bring things back to the brand strategy itself. So really doing a deep dive and starting with what is being offered is where we begin. And so if you look at the product or the service that you are wanting to market, you want to really analyze that and get a sense of what are the features of that product and what are the benefits of it to the people that you're selling it to. And once you've kind of broken it down and you've really got a sense of what it's comprised of, then you can start to work through what the message is that needs to be communicated. And so if we start there, then we get a sense of what that personality of that brand is going to need to be and what the tonality and the voice of that brand is going to need to communicate. And once we have clarity around that, it starts to become easier to decide on things like typefaces. So when it comes to choosing a typeface, I like to think about it as if you were hiring an actor for a part. So let's say that you have a play and you have a certain character, a certain personality in that play and in that role that really needs to come through. And so you want to hire an actor who will be able to deliver that message in a way that is memorable, but also believable. And that's what that matchup is between a message and a typeface. It's like, who is best suited to deliver that message so that it's believable and resonant and really has the impact that you intend for it to be making. So if we have a brand that is really bold and strong and direct and perhaps a bit contrarian and in nature, and that's the personality and the tone of all the messaging, then we want to make sure that the typeface probably is upright. Maybe it has a bit of weight and sturdiness to it. It's going to hold its ground. It might be that it needs to be unapologetic. We might want to move into something that's more contemporary, so like a nice sans serif that's kind of upright and has some good form to it. As you can see, that typeface then becomes a great vehicle for delivering that message so that it really is cohesive and there's a congruence to it. You know that you're off the mark when there's a discrepancy between what is being said and the typeface that's being used. It's almost like if you have a very serious line that needs to be spoken and you have a really itty-bitty, high-pitched voice, and it just doesn't work. And so that message is not going to be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form. And so we want to create that congruence. The other thing that you want to keep in mind when choosing a typeface is the idea of differentiation. So back to the brand strategy again. If you are in a really crowded market with a lot of people doing similar things or a lot of products that are being positioned in similar ways, you also want to consider how you're going to be different so you can stand out. And so you might want to go about things in a completely different way in order to create a bit of an interesting effect. So let's say, for example, you were, you were like a French soap company, and everyone in your space was really telling that traditional story around craftsmanship and this connection to the land and the romance and the harkening back to the past, and we love that. I love that story so much. But perhaps if it was a crowded space and there were too many people going out at it in that really typical kind of a way, you might want to do something completely different and sort of refresh how people think about French soap and go really modern and crisp and clear and find other ways of weaving in that story of care and craft and romance in ways that are just a little bit more less typical than what you see everywhere. So it's always a bit of a balancing act of getting that personality right, that tone right, making sure there's a good congruence between the message that needs to be communicated and the typeface that is chosen, and then making sure that something is going on that's differentiating it, that's giving it that unique edge, so that we make sure that what you're putting out stands out and is noticed. So then, the little details, as you start to narrow your choices down, you probably come down to a small grouping of typefaces that all kind of, have the right personality, the right tonality, but there might be slight sort of differences between them. Then that's an opportunity to get a little bit more nuanced, in the messaging. If it's a really bold message, but you still want to be slightly approachable, you might want to just choose a really bold, strong typeface that has a slight rounding on it, just to kind of soften it, just a touch. And so with the subtle nuances of typefaces, you can start to refine things and start to kind of anchor into the subtleties and the nuances of that brand and really hone in and communicate exactly how it needs to come across visually. So that's a starting off point. There's so much we could go into in terms of typography, but that's kind of the gist of it. I could do a whole course on typography, but let's just start with that, and happy to answer any questions that come up related to typography if you have any more. So the second question that came in from Kyla was, she says, my question is, how does one brand a sense of feeling or desire around a product? And that's a great question. So much of creating a feeling or a sense of desirability around a brand has to do with really leaning into that message, really committing to whatever that message is that you're trying to communicate, and really not holding back when it comes to finding creative ways and interesting ways of utilizing all the creative tools that you have at your disposal to shape a fantastic experience for your customers or your clients. And so what I noticed in some people is that they will put a lot of, just tons of care and attention into creating the offering itself. So if it's a product, they might source the best ingredients. They might do portions of it by hand. There might be a lot of artistry and craft and care that goes into making that product. And yet, when they go to communicate to other people about it, they don't continue that thread, that congruent thread between what they've done, what they've made, what's great about it, what people are going to love and appreciate about it, and how they speak about it. So we're always trying to create that congruence between the two. And so if you start to think about that, then you can start to make decisions that are going to line it up. So don't hold back. Some people, I think, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to want to amp things up to the degree that you need to in branding and communications. Some people will shy back or hold back. And so you have to really amplify things. That's what branding does. It accentuates and elevates and amplifies things. And we're using all of these creative tools to make something memorable and unique and really capture people's attention, because so many things are flying at people all the time that if you don't do that, you just are not going to stand out in people's minds. They're just going to literally pass you by and not even notice. And so I think getting more comfortable with that and really committing to what it is that your brand stands for, and then leaning into that and exaggerating it, is super important. If you look at nature, nature, there's great examples of this, when a rose blossoms in all its glory, or when a gladiola kind of goes crazy in the summer, you might consider that to be a little over the top, right? But the fact is like nature knows that if you're going to get the bees and the butterflies, you've got to create something beautiful that's like that a magpie is going to kind of want to go for. And so that's what we kind of have to do with branding as well, is just really be unabashed and lean into the creativity, lean into the beauty, and think about all the ways that you can add sort of care and courtesy along your customer's path. So every point that they interact with you, what can you do to fill that with beauty and delight and surprise and care? And when people feel like you've really gone over and above to nurture that experience and to care for all of those details that maybe some other businesses might overlook, then what happens is you wow people, you delight people. And when people feel cared for and as if someone has gone over and above to really come up with an inspired way of looking after all of the people that they're trying to sell to, instead of just targeting them and going after them, you really shift how you're going about doing business, and you start to create a bond with people, and people naturally want to talk about the work that you're doing and spread the word because they had a great experience. And that's what it's really all about. When you are trying to create desire or a sense of feeling, it's really about how can we use beauty to create connection? How do we use creativity to stand out and be memorable? How do we take every point of interaction and craft an experience that people are going to enjoy and want to come back for and want to share with their friends? So that's kind of the gist of it. But I think that there's always so much potential, right, with looking at all of the points of contact. Because if you think about it, I mean, every point of your brand, there's potential. And I see it as really inspiring because you've got social media feeds, you've got, Instagram is so visual now that it's causing every brand to really need to create a visual story around what they're doing. And that can be a gorgeous creative challenge, right? It's like, how do we create this narrative? How do we fill it with all the things that we care about and value? And how do we even also weave in the bigger picture pieces of why we're doing the work that we're doing, such as our values, so that we can connect with other people and come together on common ground. Because when you can connect with people in that way and come together on a common ground, because you've shared your values and people know where you stand and people know how you feel about certain issues, then there's this connection that can be made, and you start to work with people who you share commonalities with and who are going to value all of that care and attention that you've put into creating the work that you've created. And so that's part of it as well. Now, another question that came through, and it's probably the last one that I'm going to cover today, and then if you have any more, I'm happy to hop on here again and do another video because this is kind of fun. So Kyla asked another question, and it's how to identify your target market. So this is an interesting one, and there's so many pieces of it. But again, I think it's always coming back to that product or service and really analyzing it and getting a sense of what are the features of it, what are the benefits, and to whom is this going to create the most enjoyment or impact? To whom is this going to be of the highest service is a great way to think about it. You want to connect with people who are going to really love what you've done, right? Instead of trying to force it on people who are not interested. So you want there to be a good matchup. And so really thinking about what were all the things that you considered when you made your product or service package offering, and then think who is going to really appreciate this? Who is going to share the values or the values that you used when or that you were thinking about when you made it? And who is it going to serve the most and be of the greatest benefit to? And then you can start to think, okay, that's a great starting off point for who the ideal audience might be. And so you're going to have to make some educated guesses to start with. It might be making some guesses around their age, their location, their income level, their occupation, all of those basic demographics you kind of want to get a sense of. And if you have an existing customer base, then start there. If you're brand new out of the gate, you're not going to be able to do that. But if you've been in business for a while already, you can start with your existing group of people and think, who are my ideal clients within that group? And then talk to them and get to know them, or go look at their social media presence and get a sense of what's the bigger picture, what's the psychographics, And so when we go into psychographics, we're looking at the personality, their attitudes, their values, interests, behaviors, their politics, all of those things. And you can start to get a sense of who your target market is. And a lot of it also is doing research. So you don't want to stay in guess zone too long. You can start by making some educated guesses, but once you've done that, you want to double check that and go and talk to people and interview people and get a sense of doing that market research so that you're not wasting time and energy and advertising dollars trying to speak to the wrong people. So I'll leave in the comments under this video, I will also leave some links to some great resources for doing market research that were put out by the Women's Enterprise Center, which I think are just helpful because it'll walk you through some processes for how to identify who your target market is so that you can get started on the right foot and know where to reach out to them and who they are and what they're interested in, and think about how you can connect with them and create a connection. Little things else that we could be saying about that. Yeah, I think that that's the best way to identify your target market, is really to do that and to then jump into the research. So I will put those in the comments below. And thank you to you for sending me those questions. That was really fun. And if anyone else wants to have any advice on things you're going through in terms of brand strategy or brand identity, leave them in the comments and I'll create another video to answer them. And if you want to work with me even deeper on brand strategy or brand identity, you can hop on over to my website and you'll see that I offer brand strategy sessions and do identity work. That's my specialty. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good day.